It's one of the few things everyone alive has in common. We all sleep. What kind of mattress we sleep on, when we get to sleep, how long we sleep for, those all vary. But everyone needs to sleep sometime. It's a function of living that has confounded scientists and the general public for as long as we can remember. And the question of why we sleep has proven over the years to be very difficult to solve.
The crass answer used to be that we sleep to cure sleepiness, which is utterly useless. It's like saying you eat to cure hunger. It tells you nothing about the benefits of food. But now, after 50 or 60 years of incredible research, we know that sleep is the single most effective thing that we can do to reset the brain and body health. And that every major organ and system within the body and every process within the brain is wonderfully enhanced by sleep when we get it and is demonstrably impaired when we don't get enough.
That's Matthew Walker, a professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California-Berkeley and author of Why We Sleep, the New Science of Sleep and Dream.
Once you get less than 7 hours of sleep, we know that we can measure objective scientific deficits in both your brain and your body. So, for example, your immune system will start to degrade. After just one night of short sleep, we actually observe a 70% reduction in anti-cancer fighting immune cells. We know it's critical for your cardiovascular system, and we know that all it takes, for example, is 1 hour of lost sleep, because there is a global experiment that's performed on 1.6 billion people twice a year called daylight savings time. And when we look in the spring, when we lose an hour of sleep, there is a 24% increase in heart attacks the next day. But yet in the fall, when we gain an hour of sleep, there is a 21% decrease in heart attacks. So every major disease that seems to be killing us in the developed world now has significant and causal links to a lack of sleep. That's how critical it is for wellness. It is the Swiss Army knife of health, as it were.
One of the issues associated with a lack of sleep is Alzheimer's disease. And Walker says scientists have begun to understand what the link behind the relationship is.
The link between sleep loss and Alzheimer's disease really is now quite strong. There is actually a sewage system in the brain, and it's called the glymphatic system. Now, you have a sewage system in your body, it's called the lymphatic system, but the brain has one too. Now, the time when that sewage system in the brain kicks into high gear is not when we're awake, but it's when we're actually asleep. So it's sort of a good night, sleep clean scenario. Now, one of the toxic metabolic byproducts that sewage system washes away during sleep at night is a sticky protein called beta amyloid. And beta amyloid is one of the leading causes or contributing factors, we believe, to Alzheimer's disease. So if you're not getting that sleep at night, you're not washing away all of that toxic Alzheimer's protein.
The desire to chase a solid night's sleep has driven people for centuries to look for sleeping enhancements. If you lay down at night and your mind starts racing, you may end up wasting hours of sleeping time on needless worries. For decades, many believed that a simple solution is to have a nightcap at the end of a long day, an alcoholic beverage just before bedtime to help you fall asleep.
Alcohol is a class of drugs that we call the sedatives, and sedation is not sleep. So what you're doing with alcohol is just knocking yourself out. You're not getting naturalistic sleep. The other two things that are problematic with alcohol, I'm sorry to say, is that it actually fragments your sleep, so that you will wake up many more times throughout the night, and you don't tend to remember them. So you don't recall that the alcohol was causing that sleep problem. And finally, alcohol actually blocks your dream sleep, what we call rapid eye movement sleep, which is critical for aspects of emotional regulation and mental health, as well as creativity.
More recently, the old nightcap advice has been replaced by the boom of sleeping pills, pharmaceutical solutions that promise to give us the rest we need after a long, hard day. Once again, Walker says not so fast.
I should preface this by saying I'm not anti-medication. I think there are medications that are wonderful for lots of different ailments, but the problem is that no drug that we currently have right now can produce naturalistic sleep. And the current classic drugs that people take, the sleeping pills, they are a class of drugs that we call the sedative hypnotics. So a little bit like alcohol, sedation, again, is not that natural sleep. We also know, however, unfortunately, that sleeping pill use is associated with a far higher risk of death as well as cancer. Now, I should note that we don't currently understand whether that relationship is simply correlational or it's actually causal. And I think those studies need to be done. But the public just doesn't seem to be aware of this evidence linking sleeping pills with deathly consequences in cancer. And that was part of the motivation for the book, that chapter there. I wanted to get that information out there so that the public could at least be informed and make a choice.
On the opposite end of the spectrum from sleeping pills and alcohol, we have caffeine. Caffeine isn't sold to help people get to sleep, but rather to keep them awake, maybe because they haven't been getting very good nights of sleep.
Caffeine actually keeps you awake, it makes you alert, and it blocks a sleepiness signal that gradually builds up the longer that you've been awake. And after about 16 hours of that sleepiness pressure building up, normally all of us would fall asleep and stay asleep. But caffeine comes in and blocks that sleepiness signal. Now, some people will say, I'm one of those people who I can have a coffee after dinner and I fall asleep just fine. And that may be true, but the other problem with caffeine is that it prevents you from getting the deep quality of sleep that you normally get. So people will often wake the next morning, feel unrefreshed. They won't have had a problem falling asleep or staying asleep, and they don't connect the dots. They don't realize that it was the cup of coffee after dinner that caused that lack of deep sleep, and hence they start drinking more caffeine and they're more alert, so then they start taking sleeping pills, and it's a vicious cycle.
So if alcohol, caffeine, and sleeping pills all fail to improve our sleeping schedules, what can be done? Well, a few things. Walker says one important thing to try is to reinforce our body's association between sleep and the bed.
Modernity at this stage has put us on constant reception. We're constantly bombarded. We're constantly, in the on switch position. And it's only when our head hits the pillow that we shift from going from reception to reflection. And in fact, that's the last time that we should go into that Rolodex of anxiety and the spinning wheels. There are things that people can do. It turns out that meditation is one of the things that appears to help. And the science is very good behind this. I'm a hard-nosed scientist. I was very skeptical of the evidence. And I started trying it. And that was 5 months ago. And I'm still meditating now. And the other, I think, issue that people make a mistake with is staying in bed awake. You shouldn't do that. If you've been awake in bed for 15 or 20 minutes, get out of bed, go to another room, just use dim light and read a book or a magazine. And only come back to bed when you're sleepy.
And if you find that no matter what you try, a good night's sleep seems impossible, Walker says cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is available and has been found to be effective in helping sufferers get to sleep and stay asleep. For more of Matthew Walker's research and insight into the importance of sleep, his book, Why We Sleep, The New Science of Sleep and Dream, is available now. For more information on all of our guests, visit our site, viewpointsonline.net. You can find us on Twitter at Viewpoints Radio. Our show is written and produced by Evan Rook. Our executive producer is Reed Pence. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Marty Peterson.
Viewpoints returns in just a moment.
Been looking for the perfect holiday gift for that coffee or latte lover in your life? Make it a special one with the Keurig K-Latte single-serve coffee and latte maker, available exclusively at Walmart for only $99. The new Keurig K-Latte single-serve coffee and latte maker allows coffee lovers to enjoy regular single-serve coffee or lattes in the comfort of their own home. Use any K-Cup pod to brew coffee or make delicious lattes. While most specialty coffee makers can be complicated, time-consuming, and messy, the Keurig K-Latte Coffee House Brewer is simple to use, allowing consumers to prepare coffee or lattes in minutes. Swing by your local Walmart or find the K-Latte Coffee House Brewer at walmart.com for the everyday low price of $99 and give the gift of a more delicious holiday.
And And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of Media Tracks Communications. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook to learn about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on iTunes. Plus, you'll always find podcasts of our segments and information about our guests at viewpointsonline.net. Join us again next week for your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.